What's happening? What's happening? This is KPW. I go by KPW. You can find me everywhere. Social media wise, it would be KPW Hip Hop. All streaming platforms, KPW. I'm a hip hop artist and a producer based in the Twin Cities, originating from Herndon, Virginia. And this is my DogStar interview. Let's do it. Is there a time of the day or night when creativity strikes? I would probably have to say it varies, but mostly in the morning. When I work in the morning, it's Saturday or Sunday, or Friday when I'm off from the 9 to 5 or whatever. That's not to say that it doesn't strike at night, but it's probably the most ripe in the morning if, in a coffee shop or something. Like oftentimes what I'll do is I'll leave the house because, I live by myself, right? So I could do anything that I do in one of them coffee shops and more at home because I got the whole studio set up and everything, but I got to get into a different environment. So when I do that, number one, it gets me out of the house, it gets me into a social environment, and it heightens the creativity. But it happens to be early in the morning. It happens to take place early hours of the morning on the weekend, which is the ironic part because 5 days out of the week, that's not really happening. Now, something might come to mind. I just might not be able to work on it right away. We talk about the whole shower thing, right? As far as people's creativity coming to them in the shower and whatnot. I mean, that certainly happens. But I would probably say it's in the moment of, when I'm in front of my setup. So if I have my DAW in front of me, I got a beat playing. It doesn't even have to necessarily be that though. It could be when I'm driving to my destination and then I see something cool or the light bulb goes off. I mean, it definitely varies. And that's not to say that it doesn't happen at night either, right? Because weeknights, some weekends, of course, I'll spend a significant amount of time at home in the room that I designate as a studio, just making sure that I get something done, even if I'm not actively working on something. If I'm actively working on something like editing a video or finishing a track or something like that, then naturally I'm going to be in there, right? And through the creative process, as far as when you're editing a video, which constantly brings creative ideas, because I don't really map that part out. I'll map the music video out just as far as here are the locations, where we going to go, what's the storyboard going to look like. But when you're editing, you're kind of figuring out, at least for me, I'm figuring out on the fly how I want to edit it. Because I don't know how I never know up until the end of the video when the finished product is done. I never know what I want that to look like. It's literally coming together as I go along until the finished product is done, with the exception of random, little unique ideas that do come up when you're shooting or when you're planning it. But that's a more natural progression of that. When you're making a beat, it's similar. You know what I mean? So it can be all over the place. It varies, but I would say probably most definitely early in the morning when it comes to, getting that time that I don't necessarily get during the week. The creativity is heightened because of the setting and the time of the day. Sleep, right? That's important because it's going to keep you sharper. There's not much that's changed in the last 3 years. I still don't get a lot of sleep, right? And it's that I need to change that. I need to get better. I would say, though, that at least in my experience, when I have been more on top of that type of thing, as far as, getting more hours of sleep per night than 5, I do notice differences. Nothing has changed with the fitness tip. I still do 5-6 days a week. I still take cold showers. I still do all that. My body composition has pretty much stayed the same, and all that contributes to the creativity and the breath control, everything along those lines. It does probably compare better in terms of, am I going to be more creative, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm not somebody who's exempt from, say, having writer's block, right? I've experienced that before. There are times that I'm just, no matter what those factors are, not as inspired. And that's not because of discouragement or anything like that. It's just that sometimes there are events and settings that are going to bring that on more than others. Between probably the end of 2023 and now, I haven't particularly had writer's block or anything like that. I haven't had creativity blocks. I would say there's more of a progression that's taking place in a more constant or gradual nature to it, if anything, if there've been slowdown. But it's been consistent, just as far as, from everything leading up to the last project I put out in May to now. I mean, I've been on a streak. Between the last project, matter of fact, between months leading up to the last project, which was in May, end of May, and now I've been on a writing and recording streak. I've been working on a lot of stuff, and I haven't alerted too many people to it because I don't particularly like to tell everybody, yeah, I'm working on a project with this person and this person and this person, because then the expectation kind of jinxes you. But all I will say is that the writing has been nonstop. The recording has been nonstop. So that's the difference between, say, now in early 2022 and mid 2023. Yeah, it's just a constant powerhouse of, movement, work, and, keeping that wheel greased. And I try to keep it as regimented and professional as possible. I mean, there's always going to be a little woo-woo that's going to make its way in there, but I try to keep it as organized as I can, Now I got to stay hungry. Singles or albums? Albums. Definitely albums. I've put out singles before, but it's not really naturally what I gravitate towards doing. It's typically not, let me put this single out and then, nothing, it doesn't land on any project or anything like that. I don't have anything against that. What I was used to seeing and receiving music, hip hop in particular, I'm just so used to the format of, a single leads, album expectation gets set, and then the album comes out, and of course, in accordance with visuals. The visual comes out for this song, and the visual comes out for that song, and the visual comes out for that song. Could still be deemed a pretty old school model, but that's what I'm used to, just because, the album, concept of the album to me is something that goes along with longevity. The whole single thing is, especially with how prominent it is these days, indicates the fast-paced kind of microwave nature of everything. And again, whatever works for whoever is whatever works for whoever. I am somebody who wants to do this because I don't think of it as a flash in the pan type of thing. I don't think of it as something that needs to necessarily cater to the fact that everybody has short attention spans now. So now I have to compromise my art to accommodate that. Not necessarily saying that you can't, experiment, but also not to say that you can't adjust a little bit to at least give people that chance to tap in, and then let them choose if they want to, stay for longer or whatever the case. But I'm just used to what I was raised on, and I always tell people that, part of the reason I do this is because I can't just be a consumer and then let that be the end all be all and be satisfied with it. I have to contribute back to what raised me. And the only way that I know how to do that is to also do it in the format that I learned, or at least I was raised on, which was to expect albums, right? I mean, and also as an artist, who loves to create music and put this thing together, it's not enough for me to put out a single. I got more to say. I got to do more. You know what I mean? That's not satisfactory to me, right? And I really don't want that to be satisfactory to anybody who hears what I have to say and enjoys what I have to say. So I'm gonna give them an album. It's not to say that I haven't experimented before with something that I wouldn't normally make, but that doesn't mean that I'm compromising the art. What I would probably tell somebody is that it's hard to say, actually, man, because people are in it for different reasons, right? So, I mean, people might not necessarily want to do this for themselves. I mean, it would seem to me that if somebody really loves this thing and they want to do it for themselves, they're eventually going to, even though they might not necessarily do so at first. We could probably all give examples of label artists who we've seen evolve for the better, just in terms of, and I have one particular person in mind right now who's one of my favorite non-rap artists of the day, right? An R&B artist who started out on a major label, right? Was collaborating with big features and all that. Some of who are also my favorite rap artists. But when you listen to the sound, you could tell, you listen to that sound today that she put out on that first album, which, by the way, she doesn't even perform songs from anymore, found her own sound. You can see that progression, and you can see where that pressure came from. You can see somebody was saying, okay, you know, from the major label perspective, you have to put out a song that sounds like this today, right? This is the quota or whatever it is you want to call it that you have to meet. And you can tell it was influenced by that, versus when this person went independent, they found their sound, they found a signature, and now you can make the link between albums with that signature. So it might not necessarily be something that is a self-imposed thing, as far as wanting to sound like themselves or wanting to do the art for themselves, which they may have started out thinking it was going to be, but then having pressure to do so. So I think that's an example of how somebody might eventually find themselves doing their own thing and making their music as organically and true to themselves as possible. I don't think that that's ultimately something that you would have to tell somebody. There's nuance to it. Somebody might not necessarily be in the position to do that yet, right? But I would hope that at some point they would find themselves in a position where now they're ironically the happiest they've ever been. And if their fan base is following them, regardless of any of the radio hits that the general public or most of the general public only knows them by, the true fans are going to follow them up to what most people don't know now, to the point where they know they exist, and most people might think they stopped making music. I've seen examples just by people that I'm fans of myself, or people's music who I'm fans of myself. I'm not a fan of any individual, but as a consumer as well as a creator of this music, you know, of course, you get your inspiration from somewhere. You got to draw inspiration from somewhere. Yeah. I think that's what the kids say. Yup. Where can fans follow you and find your music? Fans can follow me on every social media platform, even though I don't use all of them, at KPW Hip Hop. And that's across the board. So that would be mostly Instagram. That's what I'm most active on. I get on TikTok like once every 2 weeks. I don't use that thing. X, I might pop on there like once every 3 months and see if I got any notifications and hop off. So mostly Instagram. My DMs are open. Profile is public. So that's where I'm the most accessible. I got a Facebook music page too. So everything from the Instagram typically uploads to that as well. As far as social media platforms, KPW. Just straight up KPW everywhere. YouTube, which I would consider a social media platform, would be KPW Hip Hop as well. All the music videos, all the visuals, everything is there. KPWHipHop.com, KPWHipHop.bandcamp.com. All the music is there too. One of the first musicians I remember seeing on TV was Michael Jackson during the Bad era. And I was scared of him. I mean, I was like 3-4 years old. So, of course, you know, because it was the whole Jerry curl, the eyeshadow and all that. And he looked mean, right? When he's on stage and he's active and he's, you know, engaged in the performance. Yeah, I mean, he looks mean. He's making gestures and whatnot. He's got the, you know, the furrowing of the brow and all that. He's projecting. So, you know, yeah. So, you know, I was a little terrified. You know, I didn't quite know what was going on there. But as time went on, you know, and he progressed through, I mean, he was very well progressed through his career by that point, because, you know, we're talking late 80s, and this is somebody who was doing it since he was a kid. But it introduced me to his musical genius. So, you know, I think being one of my favorite musicians and having seen that from so early on, you know, that's That's a dope memory. I don't think I've thought about this until now, just as far as, you know, what the correlation would be between Michael Jackson and how I've made music as far as inspiration goes. I mean, there has to be some. This dude has some role in everything everyone has done. I know, I mean, coming from the land of Prince, you know, there's the debates that take place and whatnot, and there's the, you know, the comparisons and everything like that. But you hear that trope of, you know, who's the next XYZ. I don't think there's anything wrong with having, you know, recognizing or acknowledging influence in art. But when you try to set the standard or set the bar for somebody to be the next insert existing artist already or established artist already, you somewhat indirectly either set them up for failure in your mind, because if they don't live up to that, or if they go a completely different direction, then you're disappointed, or you just simply you take that individuality away from them. I think that everybody who has something great to offer should be considered in a class of their own in that sense. I mean, of course, we can look at things that are subjective and objective about what somebody does better. I mean, there's no denying that. But to constantly be basing your fandom or your enjoyment of the music off of comparison, I don't really think that's the look. You know, I'm not keen on boxing myself into a genre in terms of, you know, not making something that fits me and that I want to make. At the same time, I'm still a hip hop artist, right? I mean, I haven't heard, for example, A$AP Rocky's new album yet. That was the understanding of how that album was put together. Basically, he, at least what I grasped of it, was that he was putting songs together on one album that fit under a bunch of different genres. So I think there was hip hop on there, metal, maybe country. I don't know. I haven't heard the album, but that was the headline that I read. What I remember is the first one he's put out in a while. But to use that as an example, you know, somebody very well may try that and it might be well received. I don't know that I necessarily go that far, right? Just because, I mean, it would take a lot of studying for me, you know, for me to try to jump in and make something that I didn't come up listening to like that. You know, I listen to a lot of different genres, but there's certain genres I don't. And there's certain genres I'm not as familiar with. So it would be, for me, it would be pretentious. I mean, somebody like him or whoever else does that, they may be very well versed. I'm not as well versed in everything, right? I'd have to first be somebody who has had experience listening to something if I'm going to experiment with another sound. And you can go a different route. There's nothing wrong with doing that, but there's a respect that has to be paid to it if you're going to go that route. Because, I mean, we get upset when people come into hip hop and they use it as a stepping stone. I'm not talking about country music that was established by black artists that racist white artists came in and started using, that one of our black artists went into. I'm not talking about that. Beyonce wasn't appropriating. I'm talking about just the general approach of respecting a genre, understanding it first before you go into it. I come from a family that wasn't super musical. The ironic thing about that is that I suddenly have a bunch of musicians in my family. It's interesting how that happens. I mean, so some sing gospel. I got a cousin that raps. My aunt's husband made his first album like 10 years ago in his late 50s, early 60s. My older brother DJs and makes beats. That being said, he was probably the most direct influence and role model when it came to that, because he started DJing a little under a year before I started writing rhymes. He then, a few years later, started making beats, maybe a few months, 3 months before I started making beats. Our age difference is about 5.5 years. We just made a song together for the first time 6 months ago. Shot the video for it less than a month ago. Put the video out last Thursday. I saw him as he started, you know, the process of DJing, gathering records and learning to scratch for the first time and whatnot. And at the time, I just gotten into hip hop maybe less than a year earlier. I had just started, buying albums and really listening to hip hop consistently at the time. So, I mean, all these things coincided and kind of lined up. I mean, it came in good time, just as far as being able to expand my musical knowledge. Because at the time, underground was starting to become a little bit more prominent. You'd see a raucous records artist, for example, on BET or MTV here and there, f.a.i.m, et cetera, Common at the time, who wasn't as mainstream as he is now. He wasn't voiceover on Google commercial Common. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't foreign to hear underground music whenever my brother was DJing. So, I mean, that was expanding my library to a degree, bringing records in, playing cats I had never heard before. I mean, even some of the older school cats who weren't necessarily as underground, but weren't mainstream, so who were kind of in between. He introduced me to a lot of that. There's a lot of stuff that you can't just hop on Apple Music and find. You really got to dig for it. I mean, you might find it on some random YouTube channel or something like that, which to me, that's fascinating. The fact that, I mean, almost anything now that I look for that was on some mixtape or something that I downloaded off of mp3.com or DatPiff back in the day, that I go up on YouTube and search for it, it's there. That's a beautiful thing. You're looking at DJing, producing, and MCing. So we both produce. He MCs, I DJ. I mean, that's 3 elements right there in one household. How do you prepare for a live performance? I always enjoy talking about this one. I always make sure that I rehearse. Depending on how far out the performance actually is, that will determine how long I spend. I mean, if I have a show that I know is coming up in a month, I might not necessarily spend a whole month rehearsing. I might spend 3 weeks, I might spend 2 weeks. But what I'll do is I'll set aside time on a given number of evenings, I should say, each week. Make sure that, when I have that time slot open, and obviously determine my set beforehand. I'll go through that set in order of every song. And no matter how well I know the song, I'm still going to practice it as many times as I practice any other song that I don't know, or at least that I don't have 100% memorized, or that I haven't performed in a while, just so I can make sure that I'm on point. So that's the first thing. As far as when I get there to the actual venue, with the exception of maybe one time, I never drink alcohol before I get on stage, just because I want to make sure my mind is clear. I'm not a big drinker anyway, so I mean, that's not really ever a factor, but I think I've had a beer before I got on stage once and it didn't affect me, right? But I always just make sure to do that at a caution, just in case it, kind of knocks me off my game. And I never eat before I go on stage, because I want to feel light. I want to be light to be able to do the performance and whatnot. And then, I'll smash a plate of something afterwards, right? But typically the ritual is rehearsal in the weeks leading up to the show. And then once the day of the show comes, the other thing I do, I forgot to mention, is I typically don't listen to a lot of other hip hop the day of the show. Because what I don't want to do is clog my mind, because hip hop is informational. So it's similar to when, if I'm working on a task, it's really data oriented and I have to look at numbers and read and study and whatnot. I can listen to hip hop, but I specifically won't listen to new hip hop that I'm trying to, decipher and whatnot, because it's conflicting with what I'm trying to look at. No matter how familiar I am with whatever it would be, I'm not going to listen to any of that the day of the show, because I just want to keep my mind clear and prep, mentally for my lyrics. Going back to when you get to the venue, not eating before I get on stage, not having any alcohol before I get on stage. Again, even though I'm not a big drinker anyway, in the rare occasion that I do, if I'm going to have a drink, it'll be after. I want to keep everything on point. I meditate, but that's not part of the preparation. I mean, that's just a standard every morning thing. Cold shower is a standard every morning thing, so that doesn't necessarily have a direct correlation with the performance preparation. The last performance I did, local dope show, right, as my man Chaz Kangas called it when he was on. I said something similar when I was up there on the stage. It was something along the lines of, me giving them a certain positive energy and them giving it back, and it being a constant exchange through the set. That segues into the next thing as far as the performance aspect of things is not necessarily rehearsing what I'm going to say in between songs or how I'm going to interact with the audience. Sure, I mean, maybe if it's when I say XYZ, you say XYZ. I mean, prepping for that might be cool, but I don't rehearse the conversation I'm going to have. And I understand that might be necessary to a degree on, say, a 3-month tour, right? I've seen major artists who have done that when I've gone to multiple shows of theirs within a couple of months and noticed that they've done the same things or said the same things. I mean, I think that keeps things simple and keeps it moving, so that makes sense. But as far as, when I'm in an intimate venue performing, I want to have an organic conversation with the audience, incorporate some humor into that, and then other than that, just crush my set with the preparation that took place leading up to it. Do you ever feel like you're playing a character in your music or public image? No. I had a conversation with somebody on New Year's Eve. They asked me a similar question. I explained to him that I don't rap about things I don't do, right? I don't rap about a life that I don't live. I'm not a pretender. So I don't have to act like I'm a thug. I don't have to act like I'm a gangster. I don't have to act like I was hustling or I was moving bricks or anything like that, because it would be unnecessary for me to do that because it didn't happen. At the end of the day, I'm an adult and I've been around for a while. I've seen some things, and anybody my age has. From that, you rap about experiences, you rap about your perspectives on life, you rap about the things that you possibly could have done better or told your younger self, or simply inspire you to rap from a certain perspective that other people can draw from. That's who I am, right? I incorporate my principles into my raps. I don't wag my finger and preach, right? But I try to do things in a way that people can hear a unique form of rhyme by incorporating that stuff into what I rhyme about. So my process, I try to keep it as organic as possible simply by doing that. I don't have to switch into character mode when it's time to rap, or when it's time to come on the DogStar podcast, or when it's time to get on the stage, or when it's time to get in the booth, right? The way I talk on the mic when I'm rapping, or on the mic on the interview, or at the job, or wherever else, is the same across the board, right? I don't code switch, you know what I mean? Sure, I might speak a little bit more informally, or I might, not be as professional in terms of throwing cuss words around and whatever else, but I'm the same person, man. I keep this thing as organic as possible. And I think that's why I enjoy it so much, because I can just be myself. The only difference is I'm putting it into what some would call stanza format, and I'm getting on that mic and making my conversation rhythmic. You know what I mean? So I don't think I have to do that. I mean, I think there's something to be said about everybody who has started out having somewhat mimicked their favorite artist, right? I think that's somewhat inevitable. You're going to draw that inspiration, and you don't have a style yet. You just don't, right? I got a CD somewhere from 20 years ago that has like 15 whack beats on it. My first 15 beats ever that I made on Fruity Loops. It was called Fruity Loops at the time. And I still listen to it sometimes, right? But you have to get through that. I mean, it's similar to when you even are in the social media or the YouTube sphere. I don't believe in deleting videos. I don't believe in deleting my old music videos. Posts, I mean, that depends. But I don't believe in deleting my old music videos because it shows the progression. Everything that is organic is going to evolve if it is indeed organic. I try to keep it as organic as possible, man, and, leave the process of progression as far as old videos and people seeing what was put out in 2013 to 2026 as uninterrupted as possible. Everybody, I don't care who they are, looks back at their old stuff and I've told their people certain songs that they put out years and years ago are my favorite songs of theirs. And their response was, oh, when I hear that song, I just want to cringe. Like, nah, that's a dope song. I like that. It's one of my favorites of yours. It's not to dismiss their new stuff, but it's an interesting insight into perspective too, right? With how critical everybody can be of themselves. And it's also something that potentially makes you realize that people don't care as much as you think they might, right? Or people might appreciate the art more than you think they might. They might receive it differently than you do because you're probably your biggest critic. You're going to be the most critical of yourself. It's very interesting to see, man. This thing is complex. Yes. I actually have a friend who, longtime childhood friend, who just recently actually, started dating a young lady. And he and I used to make music together in the past too when we were teenagers. And he was telling me, he was like, yeah, I was showing her some of your old tracks. And one of them was from like 10 years ago. I'm like, why did you show her that, man? I was like, oh, come on, man. Why'd you have to show her the old unprofessional amateur stuff, man? You got to show her something new. The music's not bad. But the thing is, when you naturally progress and you naturally improve, you want people to see your newest, in your opinion, greatest stuff. Somebody's first impression of the older stuff might be, in your mind, not as advanced. But again, people are going to perceive it differently. So I had to bring it back to that. I had to remind myself of that. You're essentially erasing the stuff that you had to progress from. You are somewhat playing the character and pretending as if you didn't have a starting point that you had to build from. I remember the very first time I told a lie to my parents, but it's the first time I lied to my parents and got caught. I specifically remember having to keep track of the lie because it was over something stupid. It was like right before school and whatnot. I think it was, did you eat breakfast? Yeah. Okay, where's the bowl that you ate your cereal out of? Oh, it's right here. Okay, it's dry though. You didn't. Oh yeah, I washed it and I wiped it. Okay, where's the napkin? She looks in the trash can, there's no napkin, so I got in trouble for lying. But I was digging a hole, right? I had to keep track of every little piece of that lie to make it look true, and I failed because I was 9 years old and I didn't know any better. I've always been anti-persona, so you have to remember things that you perhaps told people that you do. Nah, man, I'm just gonna approach this thing as organically as possible, be me, and spit these rhymes, man. What's a song you made that you almost didn't drop? Do I have a vault of music that will never come out? I have a vault. It exists for different reasons. There's songs that I made beats out of that have prominent samples in them and some that have subtle samples in them, but I want to go about it the right way. And I mean, I'm telling you, some of these are songs that I've been trying to get a hold of somebody to clear since the last time I was here. I don't particularly deal with that anymore because obviously with tools like TrackLib and I think Splice is one. My guy AP Lit Class put me on the loop layer. There's a few sites that you can actually utilize to get around that more easily. So I would like to release those songs at some point, right? So for that reason, there's a vault and I would like to get those songs out. I would hope that they don't stay in the vault. If you could talk to your younger self right before your first show, what would you say? I don't particularly like giving advice on things that I don't think I've reached maximum capacity with. So even though I've been performing for a long time, I consider myself a seasoned performer, a seasoned artist. I want to get to a certain point before I start to give people advice on what I think they can be super successful at. I'm not saying that I'm not successful in my own right, but my exposure is not where I would ideally like it to be enough for me to give somebody advice on what to do before their first show. But I just try to be respectful to that. But what I would say to my younger self would probably be to not have backing vocals on the track. That was something that I did because it was suggested by somebody that was helping me get my production for the show together. That's not a negative sentiment to him. It's a good friend of mine, actually, but I just realized I didn't need it. And I think that it definitely disrupted from the actual performance because you're competing with the vocals. See, the thing is, I've never, even the couple of times I tried that, I wasn't doing it to rely on the backing vocals because I still spit everything regardless. I've always believed in that, right? I've always believed in if you're going to perform, you need to memorize your entire songs or nothing. If you don't memorize it, you don't perform it, right? So it's never a matter of that. again, I didn't need them. It wasn't a breath control thing. It was never anything like that. I can't really think of anything else that would fall into that because honestly, man, that was a great night. My first not open mic was my first headliner show, actually. And you know where it was? The notorious Galactic Pizza, which unfortunately is gone now. I've been saying all year that 2016 was 10 years ago, but I'm realizing now that my first show was 10 years ago. Wow. Yeah. Did that show and then did another show probably 2 months after that. And then my first show of 2017, which was in March of that year, was the last time I did that. And then after that, I scrapped that. It took a few times of doing it. But again, I mean, each time it was just by suggestion and to have them in the back for whatever effect. But I realized I didn't need them. Yeah, my guy AP Lit Class, the last show I did, he and I hit the stage for one song, one of the songs off the album, and another one that we haven't released yet. But he and I had not hit the stage before. And so he asked me, he's like, so KP, what's the setup? You gonna have the vocals in the background? Is it raw instrumental? I was like, oh no, man, we don't rap over vocals. It's raw instrumental. We spitting every single word, every syllable. It's raw vocals, man. It ain't no backing. Nah, we do this. I could tell he was happy to hear that. Keep it bare bones, no backing vocals, spit every single lyric, or don't perform the song. How often do you deal with fake love in the scene, and how do you keep it from messing with your energy? I don't know, man. I honestly don't know. I think that type of thing could be easy to spot, but you might not necessarily know when there's deep-seated resentment buried, or, when somebody has ulterior motives or seems authentic, it isn't. I don't think you can always spot it. So, I don't really keep track. I don't dwell on that. I'll acknowledge it and I'll see it and I'll, recognize it when it's there, but I don't dwell on that, man. I'm too busy. What's something that you sacrifice for this dream that people don't see? Sleep. Yeah, definitely sleep. I'd probably say money too. I would partially say that's not being sacrificed because that's more of making an investment into your craft. I was talking to my brother 2 weeks ago. We were discussing that whole thing of cracked license keys with DAWs and whatnot. You get a cracked version of some program and it works for however long, and then it starts having technical issues and all that, and then you say to yourself, all right, man, let me just invest the money, get the real thing, buy the license, and have this thing for good. And that way I don't have to worry about any of this janky nonsense. I own it now, and I've done it the real way. I've invested in my craft. It shows up in the bills I pay every month for certain subscriptions I have to have for some of the software I use, right? It shows up in the form of merch that I might have to buy, or attire I might have to buy for a music video, right? Which the costs are minimal for because I'm doing so much stuff myself. In a lot of senses, I'm cutting the middleman out. Some might see that as a sacrifice because, yeah, the returns don't necessarily come right away. So I'd probably say sleep and partially money. If you could redo one move in your career, what would it be? I would redo or revamp or have a different approach, take a different approach to being so quick to do headliner shows at bigger venues. I did my first show at 7th Street Entry about a year into when I first started performing. And I don't regret that, but I don't know that I built enough of a base to really be satisfied with the turnout. I've always had more than enough songs to perform, but when you do something like that, you want a good turnout, right? And so when you do a performance like that in that type of venue, not that the turnouts were bad. I've had some that were definitely way lighter than others, but they weren't necessarily as plentiful, if you will, as I would have liked them to be. You kind of think that you're just going to do this organic promotion, post a flyer everywhere at every coffee shop, and go to social media and post in groups and this, that, and the third. Not spamming links because we don't do that over here. You get the turnout and it's not what you would have ideally liked it to be. And that can result in frustration in some situations too. If I had taken the time to kind of build that a little bit more. Nothing wrong with performing and doing shows and whatnot, but as opposed to focusing on performing in a big venue versus getting the people, in front of the music and whatnot, and actually securing a little bit more of a possibility of getting more people into doors of a venue like that, I would have done that differently. One thing that I've really started to emphasize in myself, especially as I've gotten older, is that ultimately, if not everything, most things that I can't speak for everybody, but most things that I would fall into, or that just as a general approach to life, anything that I fall into in the way of misfortune or something that happened that is, negative, or, it brings a result that I don't particularly like, say a woman cheats on me, or, I'm broke, or whatever it is. Ultimately, it's my fault. What signs could I have spotted that I might have ignored? Say you're in a romantic relationship and, the woman you're with cheats on you, or, she disrespects you, does something that you don't like, whatever the case may be, you clash in some way. What were you ignoring that you shouldn't have ignored? What were you convincing yourself could have been different? What action were you not taking to make sure that you didn't end up not seizing that opportunity to now be in a better financial position, that type of thing? A lot of what I see, or a lot of what is easy to do, and a lot of what we've all had the tendency to do, right? I'm not going to sit here and let myself off the hook, is exonerate yourself or point the finger at some other circumstance or at some other person. One thing I don't do is talk about what happened to me, right? I'm very intentional about language. I don't like to precede things with little when I'm talking about an endeavor, because it's diminutive and it minimizes the art. I don't like to say the word damn when I'm talking about anything or when I'm describing something. Oftentimes when somebody dies, first thing somebody says is damn, R.I.P. Why would you want to use that word in the same sentence as somebody that you want to rest in peace, reside within heavenly circumstances? That doesn't align, right? So I'm very intentional about not saying stuff like that, or even using that word at all, because you're associating it with whatever you're talking about. Most recent release, the f.a.i.m, Fulfillment and Appreciation and Maturity. I've got, like I said, 7 songs on there and 3 features to be exact. First features we discussed on the song Us, Cassiopeia. We had a great collab that I actually pulled her into at the last minute. I was actually holding some mentoring sessions with a music marketing expert, Dorian of Group 82, that I was talking with over the course of probably about a year and a half. And in the session, I previewed the song for him, and he had a suggestion to add some female vocals. And so first person that came to mind was Cassie, because she's a multi-talented artist. She's got that voice, and I thought that she was probably the best person to supplement that. So got her in, we did a session, did everything real time, in studio, no email exchange, none of that. So just kind of, took in what I was guiding her through, just in terms of, here's what I'm saying and here's what I'd like to hear you sound like. And so she did that, and at the end, we did a bunch of different takes of the vocals that she was harmonizing. And that makes its way throughout the first hook, or at least the end of the first verse. And I think on part of some of the hooks, and mainly on the end of the song, and takes it out. And so that's what you hear when you listen to that song. The second collab I did was Fabric with Ken C. Made that beat around the end of 2023. He and I had already talked about working together before. Once I finished the song, he was the one that came to mind. I said, look, man, we've been talking about it, long time coming. I got one for you. Here it is. Knocked it out beginning of last year sometime, probably around the same time last year, matter of fact. Braved the snow, got the setup, got it to him, laid it out in his apartment, chopped it up on some hip hop stuff. He had all the double XL covers on the wall and all that. So we kind of took the travel down memory lane of This is what I was doing when this XXL came out. You know, this is my experience with this song and this era in hip hop with Ether and the whole nine. Here's this influence. Here's this sound that I heard when Nas said this. It coincided with the snare on this song, etc., etc. Just a real organic recording session. Got that laid down. Shot a music video for it. There's one for that too. The last collab was Character with AP Lit Class. Character was another one of those songs that came with that wave of creativity that ultimately, you know, amalgamated into what we know as the album. Initially, I was going to be on that song by myself. And he and I had been working on some stuff during that same time that I was finalizing the album. And one day he hit me up. He was like, yo, man, if you need a feature on that album, let me know. And I was literally just about to get the mixing and mastering together to the engineer. Literally, the album was finished. And so the version of the song I had just had my verses on it. And I said, all right, well, you know what? The funny thing is the Diplomatic Immunity album by Dipset, that song Uncasa, the very first song on the album, they do this little skit where he's like, you know, Killer, what's really good, B? I got to get on this album. You know, I just signed a Diplomats yesterday, this, that, and third. And Cameron was like, you know, I don't know what you want me to do on Casa. I mean, you know, you good. You got the next album, whatever. I mean, I just turned it in. He's like, nah, I gotta get on this album, B. So he spits his verse and whatnot. It's a shame how they got back them Hamlets, you know, all that. It made me think of that. And it's a joke called the song Uncasa 2. AP doesn't know that, but I was going to call the song Uncasa 2 just because of the fact that at the final hour, he hit me up and he was like, let me get on this album. And I said, you know what? We're going to do it. There's no hesitation, but just the nature with which that happened organically reminded me of that. The way it went was something like this. It was a Sunday afternoon. We scheduled whatever block, maybe it was an hour or whatever that, you know, we both probably allotted. I got back from wherever I was. He comes through. What's good, fam? How you been? Good? Comes upstairs. I press record. He knocks it out. He's like, all right, man, I got stuff to do. I'm out of here. He knocked his joint out in like one take, 3 minutes. He was gone. And we shot a video for that too. Performed it for the first time last month. Killed it. So there's footage out there of that happening. There's a video. That's one of 6 videos off the album. So we got 7 songs on the album, 6 videos. So there are videos for each of those features. Check them all out. It's important to have it just so that it gives you a different perspective on the song that you might have had before. But I mean, I think it's also makes it easier to appreciate the song and to enjoy the song. When I was growing up, I would oftentimes, if I had an album, if I owned an album, I might not have necessarily listened to certain songs, or I might have skipped something upon the first few seconds playing or not appreciated a particular song as much at first. But then once I saw the video, because, you know, the nature with which videos used to get released wasn't the same necessarily as now. Videos would literally come out months apart. And so when I would see that, I'd develop a different appreciation for the song than I had before, even if it was one of my favorite joints off the album. Seeing a video would give me a different appreciation and a different perspective of the song.
f.a.i.m. You stand to fail to plan, fail to much understand, yeah. You can't erase it, can't escape it, we made the greatest statement that can't be ignored and with zero chance to evade it. Or glaze over, the game's over, we made this blatant so it's clear that you ain't amazing. Ain't the wave, huh? So no one follows, show is hollow, you nowhere novel. You slow and scramble, you fold and grovel for no's a model. Today's standards, they made you damage your main agenda, so you play their game and stay slaving to layer lames and scammers. Enough of this simple dish. Life's an episode of existence within these rivets in the universe's genes. Who was first to move and curse the cheese and bring the need for adaptation? Blue and cursive means that's my signature. I'm big with the brand and picture it dancing. Knowledge, power, wisdom, never enough to fit in this fist of bands. Keep them all at bay unless they fam. We barely know them, but know this extended hands. Too over-eager, we lead with a skeptic glance. Too over-eager, we lead with a skeptic glance, yeah. Keep them all at bay unless they fam. We barely know them, but know this extended hands. Too over-eager, we lead with a skeptic glance, yeah. Too over-eager, we lead with a skeptic glance. It's the almighty close to the stunting era. They run in terror, so unfamiliar with strength and grit, and they run to failure. If ever their mouth is open, they bound to toe bend. Shove their heel and ankle past incisors and down their throats and forcefully swallow pride. Not near one of them had no business with to begin. Every side is a shallow side. Fake gold bracelets and lame clothing. Face froze, their games go naked for 8 cold ones. Don't be concerned, I don't consider her. She'll be more eager than to hate on us to be rid of her. Gesture submission, you settle for her. She was never great. Coated tongue that steady stick out and filthy, she never scrapes. Burden you claim you bearing, the stress use only featherweight. Need to cease to sweat the minutiae, take heed and meditate. Mouth breather, trout heaving, my house leave it. I'm out to see the culture these eagles and vultures feed off. We out to feed it. Keep them all at bay unless they fam. We barely know them, but know this extended hands. Too over-eager, we lead with a skeptic glance. Too over-eager, we lead with a skeptic glance, yeah. Keep them all at bay unless they fam. We barely know them, but know this extended hands. Too over-eager, we lead with a skeptic glance, yeah. Too over-eager, we lead with a skeptic glance. They don't know they self and don't know us. They don't know they self and don't know us. They don't know they self and don't know us. Try to take our whole style so they owe us. They don't know they self and don't know us. They don't know they self and don't know us. They don't know they self and don't know us. Try to take our whole style so they owe us. They don't know they self and don't know us. They don't know they self and don't know us. They don't know they self and don't know us. Try to take our whole style so they owe us. They don't know they self and don't know us. They don't know they self and don't know us. They don't know they self and don't know us. Try to take our whole style so they owe us. I spy lameness, bunch of cowards who pontificate upon the zeitgeist, the matrix, adjusting our approaches in the TikTok generation. Where I spice hatred, some rely on deals, right price waiting. Look, only thing I ask, what these cats doing? No damage, what the fuck these cats ruin? When I stopped giving life so much credit for the things that happen, that's when things started happening. We don't live the same, trust me, I'm not referring to no fame, nor flutes of champagne. Although lovely, spoils of the land and fruits of labor yield the joyous, feel the hard work afford and make us move the truest way we made to. They don't know they self and don't know us. They don't know they self and don't know us. They don't know they self and don't know us. Try to take our whole style so they owe us. They don't know they self and don't know us. They don't know they self and don't know us. They don't know they self and don't know us. Try to take our whole style so they owe us. I spy hatred. Several suckers who ain't satisfied as their result reflect the wasted precious time that, as we all aware, this equates to currencies in tandem with the clock. The second hand waves the clock. No use of what a whole existence will afford them. The face of any Santos can gauge it is what they made. Bad time management. We are not to blame. You had the time and damaged it. We are not the same. What scares them about execution is what excites us. A different breed, a distinction from all the dweebs. They don't know they self and don't know us. They don't know they self and don't know us. They don't know they self and don't know us. Try to take our whole style so they owe us. I spy hatred, hatred, hatred.